another episode of the Investor Spotlight Podcast. Today we have special guest Kevin Koons from Frisco, Texas. He is living the dream, so listen up to his story. Thank you so much for joining, Kevin.
Thank you, Crystal. Appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about your background and just your journey to becoming a real estate investor and having the 9 properties that you have right now.
Yeah, Crystal, I think for me, it goes back to being in university and reading a couple books. I think a lot of investors have read The Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I think the Cash Flow Quadrant also. Those were kind of stored in my mind, and knowing I wanted to get into passive income and real estate investment at some point down the road. But the practical side said, I needed a career, I needed to earn some income first. And so, would kind of take off into the corporate career from there. But over the last few years have really heavily gotten to work on activating that real estate investment vision that I had from an early age.
So you're in this corporate career and doing well with it. What was it that just triggered you to say, hey, now is the time? Did you get just exhausted of 9 to 5, or has it always been in the back of your mind and you were just like waiting for the right time to make a move into investments?
Yeah, I think, I've been pretty fortunate, had some really good career opportunities, but I moved abroad back in 2014. I moved to South Africa, and I had my first home at that time. It was a condo in Houston, and decided to give it a try, leasing it out. And I got a lot of good learnings from that experience, over 2015 and going into 2016. And then, so I think taking all those learnings kind of brought me forward into trying a little bit of a different strategy going into 2017.
So learnings, it sounds like something didn't go so well. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think I kind of just said, here's an opportunity. Let me give this a try. I didn't buy that primary residence for the purpose of listing it out. It was just kind of an opportunistic situation. And so, yeah, I think maybe just going a little bit on the cheaper side on management. And then, trying to manage it from so far away in other continents, I think was tougher for the first one for me, although, would be open to that in the future. But yeah, some vacancy periods, some maybe repair and maintenance that, I couldn't really trust. And so also not doing my financials in advance, the HOA fees and things like that kind of made it
planning
tough
for all those little details that you don't think of until they come up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so had an extended vacancy period, ended up selling that condo and kind of reflecting on everything that I learned.
So then you learned that the rental from you being in another country just wasn't working out for you. So how did your thought process change? What happened there in 2017?
I listened to this podcast, and he was, the guy was saying, a lot of people get into real estate investment and they do their first one and something goes wrong and they stop, right there. They're like, oh geez, I lost money and, I'm never going to do that again. And he said, he kind of reframed it and said, well, you're the best person to do a second property because you have such an advantage over everyone else. You've learned everything you just learned from your first property. And that really reframed things for me. And so rather than kind of just running away and not going forward, I said, well, I'm going to start again. I'm going to try a different approach that kind of works for my situation, which actually turned out to be turnkey real estate investing. And I also decided that I wasn't just going to do one property. I was going to do at least 3 because I kind of thought, something could happen to that first one and I'm not going to want to go forward again. But, if I get 3, then if something happens in one, maybe it won't spoil the bunch for me.
Law of numbers says that all 3 shouldn't fail. So you're making it a better option for you. So for those of us who don't know, what is a turnkey property? You change your strategy, you change the amount. What is turnkey?
Yeah. So I think, rising the ranks in a corporate career, that's a demanding life in itself. Being a father, being a husband, having this corporate career, it's tough to find time to dedicate to real estate. So being actively involved just wasn't something that worked for me or made sense at that time. And so once I discovered turnkey real estate investing through a number of podcasts and reading, that seemed to kind of turn on to me. So to answer your question, to me, and I know there's different definitions out there, but the type of turnkey investing that I do is really everything is kind of taken care of for the investor under one roof. So for example, the first 3 homes that I did were all homes that were foreclosed homes. And so the company I work with, they acquired the home, they do the rehabilitation, and they kind of fix it up to today's standards. And then they sell that home with, financials that would work for the investor. So they want it to be a win-win solution. So the financials have to work for the investor, the financials have to work for them. And so then you buy the home, but they also take care of finding tenants for you, managing the property. They take care of repair and maintenance. They even have in-house title, et cetera. And they've kind of grown over time. But the first 3 I did were rehabilitations, and more recent ones I've done are new constructions.
So you really just show up to the table and they take care of most of it for you. Now, do you still do your own due diligence whenever you're going through that process? I would think that would be kind of hard just to trust them completely that they are making the right decisions.
Absolutely. You're 100% right. I actually interviewed 3 different kind of turnkey outfits before I chose the one I chose, and asked a lot of questions, did a lot of research on the internet about what questions to ask. And it ended up taking some drives and with the company, with the lead guy, the owner, and just feeling comfortable enough to do one. And then, just with a large probability that I'd do more. But I think time, lends itself to trust. And so over time, we've built up some trust, a rapport, a relationship. And now they're a group that, I believe I can trust to do more with. And that's kind of led me to scale and accelerate a little bit faster.
Awesome. And so after those 3 properties, are you continuing to do more turnkey? What does the current state and the future look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think, as market conditions change, the last one of those types of properties I did was, I think, in early 2018. And I've been doing more new construction since then as the market kind of changes and evolves. And, in this time we're in today, it's evolving again. So, the strategy might evolve
May change
again. Exactly. But I think, what's been working lately, the last 6 properties I've done have all been new construction, and I've moved to, the first 3 were single family homes, and I've started doing some duplexes. And I see myself doing more kind of multifamily homes as I go forward and start to scale. But in this time we're in right now, I think kind of everything's on the table. I'm just kind of keeping my eyes and ears open for opportunity.
Yeah. And I hear that from so many real estate investors that, you can't go into it just having one game plan. You can't just say, I'm going to do rentals and I'm going to do them forever, single family for 10 years, because that may not work. You really have to be open to trying new things and learning new things and educating yourself, right, on different opportunities that are out there, depending on what's going on in the market.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I have gone to, some real estate webinars, meetups. I think there's so much to learn from other people who are doing this. And, there's a sense of community too. When you talk to other people who are doing it, you kind of feel more at home, because certainly people that are doing this type of thing are in the minority, a small percentage. And so sometimes you kind of, when you're at work or elsewhere with friends, there's not a lot of people doing this. And so, finding community, I think, is important too.
So at some point too, you ditched the 9-to-5 job. How did that decision come into play? Like, what happened to make you say, okay, I'm stable enough with the investments that, I can now do this full time and create myself time freedom and financial freedom?
Yeah, I think, yes, I have left my corporate career and had worked for 2 really great companies along the way. So, appreciate what they did for me. But I think they kind of enabled me, to put some money aside to work on this and focus on this. I think back to the cash flow quadrant, and, the thing that really resonated with me was, if anyone who's read that book, there's this E quadrant, the employee quadrant, and then there's the investor quadrant. The employee quadrant, trades their time for money, and the I quadrant trades their money for money. And, it always seemed appealing to me at some point, if I was ever able to be fortunate enough to trade my money for money so that I could spend my time on experiences. That was always something I wanted to work towards. So, I've always been somewhat frugal about expenses and put away quite a bit of savings, much more than I've needed to prepare for this moment. But even, today, as we're talking, today on March 20th, in the midst of this, COVID ID-19 crisis, I still feel really good and was prepared for something like this to happen, and still looking for opportunities. I think a lot about what Warren Buffett has said. He says, be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful. And so I think right now is that opportunity for people to be looking to find the right opportunity for them to continue to grow.
Yeah. So all about mindset. Instead of getting scared and hunkering down and saying, oh no, I need to shut myself off and stop doing everything. You're saying, take a breath and look for new opportunities and get creative on what you can find, right?
Absolutely. I think just continuing to educate yourself, continuing to learn, continuing to talk to new people. And, even in the last week, I've probably learned a half dozen new things that I hadn't thought about or considered before. And so, I think I've learned over time, there's kind of two different types of people. There are people that kind of believe that life happens to them. And there are people that believe that, they've got some control over their life. And, I guess I've kind of always been a believer that I've got some control. And, certainly there are things that happen, but, you still have choices that you get to make on a daily basis to move yourself toward your vision, your goal, and your dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like in times where there's challenges, it really just makes your mind more creative, because now you're like, I have this challenge or this roadblock in front of me. How can I work around it? And without that challenge, you might not have had that creative thought process. So it is all about mindset. And you mentioned that you have a goal here of by the end of 2020 to up to 20 properties. Tell me a little bit about that vision and like, what do you do personally to get to a goal or a vision?
Yeah, I think it's just constant conversation. So I've been working with this same group for a period of time, and as I get into one deal and get that secured, I'm kind of already thinking and focusing on the next one. So the most recent deal I've done is two new constructions. So I did a construction loan on 2 duplexes, and they're about to complete construction as we're talking today. And so I'm already looking to the next one to continue to reach that goal. I did have a goal of getting to 20 by the end of the year, and even in light of everything happening, I still want to make that happen. And so I've considered doing other geographies as well. And so I've had some conversations to look at other geographies. And, obviously you've got to do your diligence with everything that's going on today. But, I still believe that anything that happens today is going to be short term in the long scheme of life. And so continue to look for new opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I hear from you is take action. A lot of people, I think they have a goal in their mind. Oh, I want to do this. This is my goal. Well, it's just a thought unless you're actually taking steps to make it happen. And what I hear from you is that you have a thought and then you take action. And that's how, you're able to achieve those goals.
Absolutely, Crystal. I think, for when I was doing my research in the beginning, back in kind of late 2016, to get into turnkey investing, I was studying, reading. And, there was this point where, I don't know if it was listening to a podcast or just saying to myself, you're never going to know everything. You just have to kind of go for it. And there's this kind of phrase in the corporate world where sometimes you accept the job that you don't know how to do and then figure it out later. I think that kind of applies here too with real estate. Sometimes maybe you even say yes to a contract and figure out how to do it later, especially, in the state of Texas where I do a lot of my real estate investment. There are a lot of options within contracts. And so if you're doing your diligence and something doesn't work out, there's still a lot of ways to get out of it. But sometimes you say yes and then do your diligence and figure out if you can make it work. So
as long as you have those exit strategies, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. So for someone who's listening that is new to real estate or maybe they're just thinking, oh, I want to do this, but I haven't taken my first steps yet. What would you say to them? What piece of advice would you have?
I think what was helpful for me were a few different real estate podcast series that I started listening to and just kind of getting into the basics. Certainly, the Bigger Pockets forum has been one that you can do a lot of education on, but I think it's just taking one step forward and just talking to people and listening to figure out what strategy works for them, because there's a dozen different strategies, whether it's wholesaling, to your point earlier, or buy and hold, or many other different strategies. There could be something that works better for somebody else, flipping houses and being more actively involved. For me, I'm a little bit more passionate about kind of the passive side, and so turnkey real estate investing has been key for me. There's a couple podcast series out there right now today that you can search for to get more of kind of the basics and education before you kind of dive in. But one of those series can refer you to different turnkey providers, around the country as well. And so that's that could be one way to kind of get started.
Yeah. So really people need to figure out what they want to do. I think that happens too. There's so many different avenues that some people they want to do everything at once, which is really unrealistic whenever you're starting out, or they don't know what to do because there's so many options. They can't make a choice. So it is really important to find something that fits your personality and your lifestyle, and then focus on that one thing. And then, like you did, then you expand to other things as you move along. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think, for me, this is one lane that, I've gotten myself comfortable with, and, other lanes may open over time. I guess the other thing that I would encourage people to think about is if you do have a vision to depend on, passive income and be able to use your time for other things, looking at your expenses and kind of thinking about how much passive income you do need, whether that's from real estate or dividends, interest, and other sources. That's a math exercise that I do, constantly. Just, how much passive income do I need to support, the monthly expenses? And then, what does that allow me to do, my family and I, to do on a daily basis in our lives?
That's good. That way you make sure that the investments that you're focusing on are going to achieve the goals that you need to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, we've talked a little bit about kind of just, scaling up and getting started. I think the other important thing too is just, what do you really want to do with your life? Because I think if you don't have a compelling enough reason to make the change, then you probably won't make the change. And that's probably a reason why, I continue to go down the corporate career path for as long as I did. Is I don't think I had a compelling enough reason to want to make a change. And so, next steps for me is we have an international family. I mean, I've lived around the globe. I've lived in Australia, I've lived in Dubai, I've lived in South Africa, but also my wife is German. And, we have plans to move to Europe at some point and spend some time there and continue to experience international adventure, international travel, different cultures. That's just something we really enjoy doing. And I think, the opportunity to be able to have the time to pursue interests and things like that, became so compelling to us that, this vehicle.
Had to find a way to make it happen.
Exactly. And so I think, but if that weren't as compelling and interesting, I don't know if we would have had the enthusiasm to just keep pushing forward. Good
point. It's all about the mindset.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. And I think, you've also got, if you're a person who is in a relationship, I think another thing I would say is having a partner who has, some similar values to you. You don't have to be the same person and say the same things and, have the same political views or anything else. But I think if you have similar values about what you want to get from life, I think that's been really helpful. I have a supportive partner who, shares some of those same visions that I do. And I think that makes, going out and getting after this a little bit easier.
Absolutely. A good support system is really important. And I mean, even if you're on your own, you can find a support system through usually like REI groups. There's so many people that are willing to talk to you and cheer you on as you move forward with your investments.
Absolutely. And Krista, I feel kind of compelled to go back and tell you what that podcast was that I was listening to. It was
Yeah.
it's passive real estate investing is the one with Marco Santarelli. That's where I kind of got referred to geographies all over the country, and so I have to give them a little bit of credit for
Yeah,
turning me onto the
absolutely.
Turnkey.
And that way, if someone listening is interested in Turnkey, now they have a resource that they can go to check it out themselves. I definitely appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Kevin. This information was really important. Turnkey is definitely one of the newer items that not a lot of people are talking about. So now our listeners have another great resource to look into.
Yeah, thank you, Crystal. And the last thing I'd like to say is just, starting to work with you all at Royal Legal Solutions to protect my business, from an asset protection and estate planning standpoint. I'm I'm 36 years old, and it's not really something that estate planning. I don't think that's something that a lot of younger people tend to think about.
Right.
But as you get more properties, you start to think about it more and more. And so I would just say that my experience with you all has kind of opened some different doors as well. And so appreciate what you all are doing as well.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. Yeah. A lot of people, when they're starting out, they're not worried about asset protection at the moment. But once you get 3, 4, 5 properties, then it becomes something that is very important. And that's just part of the real estate journey, right? Your goals and things that are important change as you move forward. And I'm so glad that we're able to help you and help you to be successful.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it, Crystal.
Thanks.